The balcony had become Aisha's favorite place long before she understood why. It was narrow, with rusted iron railings and a cracked cement floor, but it overlooked the road that cut through their neighborhood like a quiet river. Every evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of orange and fading gold, Aisha would step outside and lean against the railing, letting the cool air brush her face. From there, she could see everything that mattered to her, or at least, everything that once did. That road held memories. It was the same road where she and Hamza used to race as children, barefoot and laughing, their knees dusty and scraped. The same road where they shared stolen glances during teenage years, pretending not to notice each other while their hearts already knew. And now, it was the road she watched with quiet hope, believing that one day it would bring him back to her. Aisha and Hamza had grown up like unfinished sentences that somehow always made sense together. Their houses stood only a few doors apart, close enough that their lives blended naturally. Hamza was the kind of boy who spoke little but meant everything he said. Aisha, on the other hand, carried emotions openly, her smiles bright, her silences heavy with feeling. Where he was calm, she was expressive. Where she worried, he reassured. It was never dramatic, never loud. Their love grew slowly, deeply, like roots beneath the soil. They never needed to name it at first. It was in the way Hamza waited for her after school, even when his friends teased him. It was in the way Aisha saved the best piece of mango for him in summer, pretending she wasn't hungry. It was in the comfort of shared silence, sitting on the steps outside her house, watching the world move while theirs stayed still. But life has a way of knocking on doors when hearts are least prepared. Hamza received the opportunity on a humid afternoon. A job overseas. A chance to earn more, to build something solid for the future he dreamed of. Everyone around him celebrated his parents, relatives, neighbors. They spoke of success, stability, respect. Only Aisha remained quiet, her smile carefully held together as if it might shatter if she breathed too deeply. That evening, Hamza asked her to meet him on the rooftop their place. The city hummed below them, unaware of the fragile moment unfolding above. "I have to go," he said softly, not meeting her eyes. Aisha nodded, though her chest tightened. "For how long?" "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe a few years." "A few years." The words echoed painfully in her mind. Years were not small things. They were made of countless mornings, endless nights, missed moments, and growing distances. Hamza finally looked at her then. His eyes, usually steady, held something close to fear. "I'm doing this for us," he said. "So when I come back, I can ask for your hand without shame. So I can give you the life you deserve." She wanted to tell him she didn't need anything more than him. That love was already enough. But she saw the determination in his face, the weight of expectations resting on his shoulders. So instead, she swallowed her tears and nodded again. "I'll wait," she said, her voice trembling despite her effort to sound strong. Hamza stepped closer, holding her hands tightly, as if afraid she might slip away. "No matter how long it takes," he promised, "I'll come back for you. This isn't goodbye. It's just distance." The night air felt heavy as those words settled between them. Days later, the entire neighborhood gathered to see him off. Laughter, advice, prayers filled the space around him. Aisha stood a little apart, watching as Hamza hugged everyone, smiling bravely. When it was her turn, their embrace lingered longer than it should have. Neither of them spoke. Words felt too fragile for the moment. As the bus pulled away, Aisha stood frozen, her hand still raised in a silent farewell. Hamza watched her through the window until she blurred into the distance. That night, Aisha returned to her balcony for the first time alone. The road below was empty, quiet, unfamiliar. She pressed her hand against her chest, where his promise now lived. She didn't know how waiting would change her. She didn't know how long love could survive distance and time. But she believed in him. And for now, belief was enough. Time did not move the way Aisha expected it to after Hamza left. She had imagined the days would rush past her, that months would blur into years without warning. Instead, time slowed down, stretching itself thin, making every moment feel heavier than the last. Each morning arrived with the same quiet question in her heart: is this one day closer to his return? At first, waiting felt hopeful. Hamza called regularly during those early months. His voice traveled across oceans, warm and familiar, filling the small spaces of her room. He spoke of long workdays, unfamiliar streets, and dreams that kept him awake at night. Aisha listened carefully, memorizing every detail, afraid that forgetting even one word would mean losing a part of him. "I miss you," he would say softly, usually at the end of the call. "I'm still here," she would reply, as if reminding both of them. She began shaping her days around those conversations. She learned his schedule, counted time zones, and waited patiently for the phone to light up. Her balcony became her refuge again, the place where she shared her joys and worries with the night sky, believing somehow that the stars could carry her feelings to him. Letters followed the calls. Real letters written in his handwriting, folded carefully, smelling faintly of a place she had never seen. She kept them in a small wooden box under her bed, rereading them whenever loneliness grew too loud. In those letters, Hamza sounded certain, confident. He wrote about the future as if it were already planned. "Just a few more years," he wrote once. "Then I'll come back and make everything right." Aisha held on to those words like a lifeline. But as time passed, the world around her refused to wait. One by one, her friends got married. Wedding invitations arrived, decorated with gold letters and promises of new beginnings. She attended them all, smiling, congratulating, sitting through laughter and music while something inside her quietly ached. Aunties whispered questions she had no answers for. "When is your turn, Aisha? Are they looking for someone for you?" She smiled politely and gave the same answer every time. "Soon, inshallah." Her parents, though kind, began to worry. They never forced her, never raised their voices, but their concern showed in the way they looked at her, lingering, uncertain. "How long will you wait?" her mother asked one evening, brushing Aisha's hair gently. "Until he comes back," Aisha replied without hesitation. Her mother sighed, not in anger, but in fear of a future that offered no guarantees. Meanwhile, Hamza's calls grew shorter. Work became busier. Time differences harder to manage. Sometimes days passed without a message, then weeks. Aisha told herself it was normal. Distance demanded sacrifice. Love demanded patience. Still, doubt crept in quietly. She found herself checking her phone more often, staring at the screen long after it went dark. Nights felt longer now, heavier. She returned to the balcony more frequently, watching the same road that once carried their shared laughter. Cars passed. Strangers walked by. Life moved forward without waiting for her permission. On special days, birthdays, anniversaries, she dressed up even if she had nowhere to go. She imagined Hamza seeing her, smiling proudly, telling her she looked beautiful. Sometimes he called. Sometimes he sent a simple message. Sometimes there was nothing at all. Each silence left a small crack in her heart. Years passed like this. Hope mixed with pain. Faith tangled with fear. Yet, Aisha never stopped believing. She defended him even when others doubted. "He's working hard," she would say. "He hasn't forgotten me." And maybe she said it as much for herself as for them. One evening, as she sat on the balcony watching the sunset bleed into darkness, Aisha realized something had changed. Waiting no longer felt light. It felt heavy, like carrying a promise that only she remembered. She pressed her hand against the wooden box beneath her bed that night, running her fingers over the old letters. The ink had faded slightly, but the words remained. They reminded her of who she had been when this journey began, hopeful, certain, unafraid. She whispered a prayer into the silence. Not for his return. Not even for answers. Just for strength. Because loving from a distance was no longer just about patience. It was about endurance. And though she didn't know it yet, the hardest part of her waiting was still ahead. At first, the silences were brief days without a call, a missed message here and there. Aisha told herself it was normal. Hamza was busy. Work overseas demanded everything of him. She waited patiently, believing that the connection they shared was strong enough to withstand distance. But slowly, the silences grew longer. Weeks passed without a single word. Then months. The once comforting voice that had traveled across oceans, reassuring her, laughing with her, and sharing his dreams, had disappeared entirely. Aisha clung to hope. She reread his letters, memorized his old phone messages, and stared at his photographs until her eyes hurt. Every time the phone rang with an unknown number, her heart leapt, only to sink when it wasn't him. She searched online, tried contacting mutual friends, sent letters she never knew would arrive, anything to hear from him. But the universe remained stubbornly silent. The balcony, once her sanctuary, now felt like a stage for her loneliness. She would stand there for hours, looking at the road below, imagining him walking down it, imagining the bus that might carry him home. But it was always just cars and strangers, the world moving forward without him. Nights became the hardest. She would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, tracing his name in her mind over and over like a mantra, willing his memory to return to her. Sometimes she cried quietly, afraid that anyone hearing would see her weakness. She never spoke of it to her parents. They had already begun to suggest that maybe it was time to let go, that life didn't wait for promises made years ago. I can't, she whispered to herself. I can't let go. Friends tried to console her. Move on, they said gently. Maybe he's, maybe he forgot. The words were knives, soft but cutting. Aisha didn't know how to explain that she couldn't forget. Not him. Not the promise he had made. Every heartbeat echoed with his name. Every plan she made secretly included him. To her, forgetting wasn't an option, it was betrayal. She found herself drifting through daily life like a ghost. Smiling when required, attending family gatherings, going through the motions of work and studies, but always carrying the weight of absence. People around her began to notice the change. Her laughter, once bright and easy, now sounded hollow. Her eyes, once sparkling with mischief, were dimmed by longing. Still, she waited. Aisha didn't know how many years had passed now. 4? 5? Time had become irrelevant. The road outside her balcony became familiar in its emptiness, yet she never stopped watching it. She imagined Hamza walking down it, imagining the day he would return and apologize for the silence, for the years lost, for everything. And then, one evening, something changed, not the world, not the sky, not the road, but a feeling deep inside her. An unnameable fear settled in her chest. The letters were all she had left, the memories, the fading voice in her mind. Yet even those were beginning to feel distant, like echoes fading into the dark. She tried to convince herself that this was just a test. That true love required faith even when it hurt. But doubt had crept in. Aisha realized that love alone couldn't guarantee reunion. Love alone couldn't control fate. And yet, she refused to let the silence break her completely. Every night, she whispered to the stars, to the empty road, to the world that had taken him from her. Come back. Please come back. But the universe remained silent. And then came the first hint that something was wrong, not from him, not from the world, but from a friend who had traveled abroad. A casual conversation, a fleeting question, a glance that held more than words. Did you hear from him? The fear that had been whispering in her heart now shouted. Something had happened. Something had changed. Aisha realized that waiting for someone is one thing, waiting without knowing why they are gone is another entirely. The absence was no longer just painful, it was terrifying. She sat on her balcony that night, the wind brushing her face, her hands trembling. She had loved for years, had waited through silence and doubt, had sacrificed her own life for a promise. And yet, she now faced the unthinkable, the possibility that the person she had loved so deeply might never return. Somewhere in the distance, a car honked. The street lights flickered. Children laughed in the alley. Life went on. But for Aisha, nothing moved. The silence was not just absence anymore. It was a shadow. It was a question with no answer. It was fate whispering in a language she couldn't understand. And she waited still, desperately, hopelessly clinging to the fragile hope that somehow, someday, he would walk down that road, and the silence would finally end. Years of waiting, years of silence, and years of hope had left Aisha feeling hollow yet strangely resilient. She had built her life around a love that existed more in memory than in reality. The balcony remained her constant companion, the letters from Hamza her only link to a past that refused to let her go. But nothing could have prepared her for the truth she was about to learn. It came on an ordinary afternoon, the kind where the sun hangs lazily in the sky and the air smells faintly of rain. Aisha had been sitting in the small cafe near her home, the one where she often went to escape the four walls that seemed to shrink every day. She was stirring her tea absent-mindedly when a man approached her, someone she didn't recognize, carrying an envelope. "Are you Aisha?" he asked politely, his voice careful. "Yes," she replied, her curiosity piqued. "My name is Saad. I knew Hamza. I mean, we were colleagues abroad. I have some news for you." Her heart skipped a beat. News from Hamza? After all these years? She felt the familiar surge of hope, mixed with fear. He handed her the envelope. Inside were a few documents, a letter, and a photograph she didn't immediately recognize. The letter was from Hamza, handwritten, but with strange gaps in memory. It began with a formal tone, then shifted into something that sounded almost like a confession. He wrote of an accident overseas, one that had changed everything. Aisha's hands trembled as she read. "I don't remember much from the years before the accident. My life, it feels like a blank page. I wake up every day trying to piece together who I was, who I loved, and what I left behind. I don't know if I can ever come back to you. I don't even know if I am the same person you remember." The photograph showed Hamza in a hospital bed, looking fragile and distant, a faint scar across his face. He was alive, but the person in the picture wasn't the boy she had loved, the man who had promised to return. Aisha felt the room spin around her. She gripped the edge of the table as tears streamed down her face. The world she had held onto, the hope, the letters, the promise, suddenly seemed fragile, almost unreal. She had imagined this moment countless times. She had dreamed of reunion, of running into his arms, of hearing his voice say he never left her. But this was nothing she could have prepared for. For days, Aisha couldn't think of anything but him. She stared at the photograph over and over, trying to reconcile the man in the picture with the memories in her mind. The accident had taken more than his memory, it had taken the life they had planned together, the future he had promised, the love that had anchored her for so long. She wanted to hate fate, to scream at the universe for being so cruel, but the tears in her heart weren't anger. They were grief for what was, for what could have been, for the years of waiting that now felt like both courage and folly. Her friends and family tried to console her, but no words could fill the emptiness. Even now, as she sat in her room staring at the ceiling, she felt the weight of the years pressing down. And yet, despite it all, there was a strange sense of peace. Hamza was alive. That alone, however bittersweet, was something she could hold onto. She realized that her love had been true, unyielding, and patient. She had endured what few could. And though the ending wasn't what she had imagined, Her heart had carried the story of their love faithfully. Aisha returned to her balcony that evening, the photograph in her hands. The road below, the same road she had watched for years, seemed both familiar and foreign. She pressed the photo to her chest, whispering a silent prayer for him, for the man who had left, for the boy she had loved, for the stranger he had become. She knew now that waiting, no matter how long or painful, had been an act of love. And love, she realized, sometimes means letting go. For the first time in years, she felt the stirrings of a new beginning, not with him, not yet, but with herself. The road would always carry their memories, but she understood that her life didn't have to pause for someone else's fate. Some love stories don't end in happiness together. Some end in understanding, in acceptance, in the quiet realization that life is larger than any single promise. And for Aisha, that understanding, as painful as it was, became her anchor in a world that had shifted beneath her feet. The balcony had changed. Or maybe it was Aisha who had changed. After years of waiting, after years of hoping and fearing, after the revelation that Hamza was alive but no longer the person she knew, the space that had once been a sanctuary of dreams and anticipation had become a place of reflection. The road below, the same road she had watched for countless evenings, seemed different now, not empty, not waiting, but moving. Life, she realized, had always been moving, even when she had stood still. She held Hamza's photograph in her hands, tracing the lines of his face. The man smiling back at her wasn't the boy who had promised her forever. He was someone else, a stranger with fragments of memory she couldn't reach. And yet, despite the distance between them, despite the years of silence, she felt no bitterness. Only a profound sadness, a grief for a life that might have been. For days, she allowed herself to cry, to mourn, to release the weight of the waiting. It was not easy. The memories of their laughter, their shared dreams, their stolen glances from childhood lingered like shadows, refusing to be chased away. But slowly, slowly, she realized that the love she had carried for so long didn't need a reunion to exist. Love, she understood, was not possession. It was endurance, it was memory, it was the courage to hold someone in your heart even when life demands their absence. One evening, as the sun bled gold into the horizon, Aisha stepped onto the balcony with a different purpose. She didn't look for the bus, the shadow of a figure, or the return of the boy who had left. She looked at the road, at the passing cars, the laughing children, the ordinary rhythm of the world, and for the first time in years, she smiled without expectation. "I loved you," she whispered softly into the wind, "and I still do. But I can't wait anymore." It was a declaration, not of defeat, but of freedom. A freedom she hadn't known she craved. She understood that waiting for someone who may never return is a kind of prison, and that love, when it becomes a chain, can bind the soul as tightly as absence. She pressed the photograph to her chest one last time, feeling the warmth of memory, then placed it carefully in the drawer beneath her bed. She didn't need it anymore. The love had already been lived. Its purpose had been fulfilled. Her family noticed the change. Her friends saw it too. There was a lightness to her steps, a calm in her gaze. She began to engage with the world again, not out of obligation, but because life demanded participation, and because she finally realized that her happiness didn't need to be dependent on anyone else. Aisha didn't stop loving Hamza, and she didn't stop cherishing the years they had shared, both near and far. But she stopped letting that love define her existence. She started to travel, to meet new people, to embrace experiences that had once seemed impossible. She laughed freely again, and when she thought of Hamza, it was with gratitude rather than longing, a gratitude for having loved, for having waited, and for having survived the silence. Some nights, when the city sleeps and the balcony is bathed in moonlight, she still whispers his name. Not with the ache of longing, but with the quiet reverence of someone who has loved fully and lost without regret. Those moments are private, sacred, and entirely hers. Life, she realized, is unpredictable. Fate can twist the path in ways we cannot foresee. Promises can be broken by circumstance, and plans can crumble under the weight of accidents and time. But the human heart is resilient. It can endure, heal, and ultimately, find peace even when the story doesn't unfold as imagined. Aisha finally let go, not of her love, but of her need for a particular ending. She understood that some stories are meant to teach, to shape, and to strengthen. Some stories do not conclude with happily ever afters. And that was okay. She closed the balcony door gently that night, a soft smile playing on her lips. The road below continued its ceaseless flow, carrying lives, laughter, and the ordinary rhythm of existence. And Aisha, standing tall in the quiet aftermath of years, felt a deep and unshakable truth settle in her heart: she had survived, she had loved, and she was finally free. Some love stories end in togetherness. Some love stories end in loss. And some like hers end in acceptance. The road would always hold memories of him, but it no longer held her hostage. She could finally move forward, carrying the love she had lived as a treasure, not a chain. And for the first time in a long time, she was at peace.